week 6 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few tight ends I have as sleepers this week. The first guy, Noah Fant of the Seattle Seahawks, is Noah Fant. He's been a sleeper a lot this season, and for the most part, he's come up with some solid ball games, and no tight end's a weak position in fantasy football, and he had a bye week in week 5, so Fant, the first 3 out of 4 games, 8 or more fantasy points in PPR league. So this week here, a good matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals. That really isn't that great of a defense. They give up the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. So Geno Smith and Noah Fant have a good rapport. Fant last season, I know it was a down year for him, but so far this season, the last few games, he's gone out there and made plays. Week 3 versus Carolina, 4 catches, 41 yards. And then week 4 at the Giants, only 2 catches, 63 yards. And now one of the grabs was a 52-yard play down the sidelines where he almost took it to the house, but he stepped out of bounds. But right now, available 98% of fantasy leagues. And if you need a sleeper option, he's out there this week. The next guy, Tyler Conklin of the New York Jets. I know a lot of these players, they've been on the sleeper list over the last few weeks, but they're still out there, all these guys. Tons of fantasy leagues. Available is Conklin right now in 92% of leagues. So right now, he's had 9 or more fantasy points in the first 3 out of 5 games on the season. He's the number 2 target in this jet passing game with Zach Wilson on the center. We saw it last season. Once again, we're seeing it this season, Garrett Wilson and him. And Conklin, he's a tight end that could work the seam of the field. Yards after catch, we saw a nice grab last week's game, over 40 yards. We had a lot of yards after catch. So the last few weeks for him, week 3 versus New England, 3 catches, 26 yards. Week 4 versus Kansas City, 4 catches, 58 yards. And week 5 at Denver, 4 catches, 67 yards. So this week here, I know it's going to be a game where it's going to be tough versus Philadelphia Eagle defense, but they do give up the 11th most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. So I think Tyler Conklin, he could go out there. He could have a decent game once again. And like I said, he's getting peppered with targets from Zach Wilson. So in the last 3 games alone, he's had 17 targets as Conklin. So he's definitely a tight end on the sleeper radar this week. And the third and final tight end I have as a sleeper is Gerald Everett of the Los Angeles Chargers. So Gerald Everett, he was decent last year for the Chargers and fantasy owners. 58 catches, 555 yards, and 4 touchdowns. But so far this season, he hasn't done much. His best games were week 2 at Tennessee, 3 catches, 47 yards. And week 3 at Minnesota, 6 catches, 30 yards. But right now, coming off a bye week, Dallas Cowboys coming to town. You know, Kellen Moore is going to want to really open this offense up, former coordinator of the Cowboys offense. Now the coordinator here for this Los Angeles Charger team. So they give up the 13th most fantasy points is this Dallas Cowboy defense to tight ends. And we just saw George Kittle go off with a 3-touchdown game versus the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. So right now the Dallas Cowboy defense, they're going to be focusing on Keenan Allen in this ball game in Austin Eckler. So I think Gerald Everett, he could have a sneaky game. Right now he's available as Everett, not like these other tight ends, but he's still out there in a decent amount of leagues at 76%. So that's a few tight ends I have as sleepers here for week 6 of the fantasy football season.